students, you are joining with transformation program which is conducted by Sri Lanka. So then here we are joining with BL5 business process audit and digitalization subject. We conducted series of lectures. Now you are joining with chapter number 8, gathering audit evidence, part number 3. So here we are planning to discuss fixed assets, it means non-current asset, and tangible intangible asset, and then investments and inventory process, right. So then basically as auditor, how we are going to ensure this, as well as a business, what are the controls around this process, right. So then here we are discussing kind of a two different aspect. As a management, what are the controls we are establishing around this process, and as auditor, how we are going to perform audit procedures to ensure these balances, right. So under transformation program එක යටතේ අපි මේ lecture series එක කරගෙන යන්නේ English medium වලට අලුතෙන් එන සිංහල medium කරපු ළමයින්ට support එකක් විදියට by using both language we are going to support you all under all those aspects, right. අපි one by one chapters වලට තමයි lecture series එක කරගෙන යන්නේ. අපි already discuss කරලා තියෙනවා part 2. එතෙන්දී අපි cover කරා revenue and then purchases, other income, other expenses, salaries already අපි discuss කරලා තියෙන්නේ, audit procedures and then internal controls. දැන් කතා කරන්න යන්නේ non current assets, tangible non current asset, intangible assets, investments and inventory. එතකොට වාට statement of financial position එකේ line items වාට visualize කරගන්න පුළුවන් one by one. එතකොට අපි chapter summary එකට ගියොත් here we are targeting chapter 8, area number 8. So then including this aspect, right. Firstly, we are focusing about fixed asset and mainly tangible asset in a organization, tangible assets in a statement of a financial position. So then what are the examples you can give for tangible asset? Classic example is PP&E, right, PPE, property, plant and equipment, and investment property, or biological asset, living animal or living plant, right. Those are the basic tangible non-current assets we are having, right. In biological asset, if you are having consumable biological asset, some parts may be current asset, right. So basically you have to focus, you are doing kind of a capital nature expense and creating a fixed asset for a kind of a expectation of more than 1 year. So then as an organization, this structure about non-current asset may be different. So according to the industry, according to the nature of the entity. එතකොට hotel company එකක් ගත්තොත් මොනවද තියෙන non current asset, garment එකක් ගත්තොත්, service rendering company එකක් ගත්තොත්, hospital එකක් ගත්තොත් different nature. එතකොට company එකට ඔයා study කරලා ඒ process එක understand කරලා, so then you can decide what are the audit procedures you can perform. අපි මුලින්ම බලනවා PPE process එක කොහොමද study කරන්න කියලා. අපි auditor කෙනෙක් විදියට PPE process එක study කරනවා නම් what you have to do is you have to do the walkthrough test, right. Once you are doing your walkthrough test, you are focusing about what? Implementation and design effectiveness of the control, right. So then once you are going through this process, these are the aspect you need to focus in. What is that? The capital budget. So So as an organization, all the expenses, they are stick with a kind of a budget. That's called budgetary control should be there. Budget එක කළාද තියෙන්නේ. Budget එක අපි exceed කරනවා නම් whatever the capex or day to day expenses අපිට budget එක exceed කරනවා නම් අපි අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම අපි target එක profitability එක achieve වෙන්නේ නැහැ. That's obvious, right? So then budgetary control should be there. So then අපි බලන්න ඕන capital expense එකක් කරනවා නම් is that budgeted capex budget, right? So then budgetary control එක තියද කියලා බලලා approve කරන්න ඕන. So the approval for spending on PP&E. So then approval එක එන්නේ budget එකේ තියෙනවා නම් කීයද කියලා බලලා investment appraisal එකක් කරලා ඒ කියන්නේ කරන්න යන investment එකේ investment එකෙන් අපිට return එකක් එනවද, NPV positive ද, අපිට IRR එක return එකක් තියෙනවද, internal rate of return එකක් තියෙනවද. So then those things need to be evaluated. And then with the approval what we have to do is we have to select a proper vendor. So then to select that you have to do kind of a tender procedure, right? So then you have to perform a tender procedure. එතකොට අපි company එකක් විදියට හොඳම buyer කෙනෙක් select කරගන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට අපි register buyer කෙනෙක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, අලුත් buyer කෙනෙක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට අපි ඒකෙදි independent quality buyer කෙනෙක් select කරගන්න ඕනේ. එතෙන්දී අපි tenders call කරනවා කියලා කියන්නේ අපි open tenders දානවා. නැත්නම් අපි කියන quotation ගන්නවා. quotation minimum අපි කියන process එකක 2-3 quotation should be there. එතකොට quotation අරගෙන හොඳම quotation එකට තමයි අපි reasonable quotation එකට තමයි අපි vendor select කරන්නේ. එතෙන්දී අපි බලන්න ඕන දේවල් organization එකක් විදියට මොනවද හිතෙන්නේ? අපි දෙන price එක ABC A කියනවා 10 million, B කියනවා 9.5 million, C කියනවා 7.5 million. එතකොට ඔයා බලපු ගමන් මොනවද කරන්නේ? C ව select කරනවද? නෑ, C ව select කරන්න කලින් ඔයා other aspects උත් බලන්න ඕන. C ගේ මිල අඩු වුණු ගමන්ම C select කරන්නේ නෑ. මොකද අපි බලන්නේ එයාගේ quality එක, එයා කොච්චර experience තියෙනවද, කොච්චර capacity එකක් තියෙනවද, එයා කලින් කරපු services මොනවද, ඒව බලලා එයා අලුත් කෙනෙක් නම් market එකට අපි B ව select කරනවා, right? So then the vendor evaluation, tender evaluation process should be there. With this process we need to get that approval from that committee or whatever the executive people, and then we have to record in the non-current asset in the bookkeeping system, right? So then after identifying this you can purchase the that capital nature item, whatever the investment you can purchase, and after purchasing you have to record, you have to capitalize this to your books. That's called capitalization. And if you have done kind of advance payment capitalize කරලා තියන්න බෑ. ඔයාට asset එක use කරන්න පුළුවන් condition එකට ආවට පස්සේ තමයි ඔයා capitalize කරන්න ඕන. So then you can do depreciation after with the usage. ඔයාට පාවිච්චි කරන්න පුළුවන් condition එකට ආව තැන ඉඳලා ඔයා depreciation කරන්න ගන්නවා. So then there should be a process to calculate depreciation, and then that depreciation entry should be passed to the P&L. So then those entries should be passed, and then you should have a asset register, and that asset register should be updated according to your disposal or whatever the addition, and then a asset set එක හැම වෙලේම කියන්නේ frequently you should have a proper physical verification of fixed asset. එතකොට fixed asset වල existence ensure කරන්න ඔයාගේ once in a quarter hari, once in a half year or once in a year hari, you should have a physical verification of fixed asset to ensure the existence of the items in that fixed asset register, right? And disposal process එක අපි dispose කරනවා නම් asset එකක් ඒකට approval තියනවද ඒ set එකත් බලන්න ඕනේ. ඊට පස්සේ asset reconciliation with the GL. එතකොට අපි මේ register එක physical verification එකත් එක්ක කළා GL එක general ledger එකේ තියෙන අන්තිම balance එකත් එක්ක check කරලා බලන්න ඕන GL එකේ හරි balance එක තියෙනවද කියලා. So then that is the process basically management going through. So then as auditor අපි මේ process එක walk through එකක් කරලා check කරලා අපිට පුළුවන් අපිට මොනවාද design and implementation effectiveness එක ensure කරගන්න. ඒකට අපි මොකක්ද කරන්නේ walk through test එකකින් මේ process එක බලන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට අපි මේ process එක බලලා walk through එක කළා මොකක්ද කරන්න ඕනේ? ඔයාට auditor විදියට ඔයා flow chart එක ඇඳලා documentation part එක කරලා අර අපි මොනවාද remuneration salaries payroll ගැන කතා කරා වගේ flow chart එක ඇඳලා documentation එක කරලා controls මොනවද කියලා identify කරලා controls එක risk ටික map කරලා control map එකක් හදාගෙන understand කරගන්න ඕන design and implementation effectiveness එක PP&E process එකේ. එතකොට PP&E process එක විදියට ගත්තොත් ඒකෙන් balances විදියට depreciation PPE cost or revaluation or then disposal gain ඒ සේරම numbers significant accounts financials වලට එන්නේ මේ PP process එකේ තියෙන controls වලින්, right? එතකොට business එකක් විදියට මොනවද තියෙන business risk මේ process එකේ? අපිට business risk තියෙන්න පුළුවන් management එක PP&E misuse කරන්න පුළුවන්. PP&E ගත්ත PP&E නැති වෙලා තියෙන්න පුළුවන්, right? And then again budget එක exceed කළා PP&E purchase කරලා තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට budget එක exceed කළා නම් obviously you can't achieve the budgeted revenue and the profit. ඊට පස්සේ depreciation වැරදිලා තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. expense එකක් විදියට recognize කරගන්න තියෙන එකක් capitalize කරලා තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඊට පස්සේ මොනවද dispose කරන්න තියෙන එකක් approval නැතුව dispose කරලා තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඔයා quotation call කරලා නැත්නම් management එකේ relationship එකක් base කරලා quotation call කරලා වෙන්න තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. management එකේ related party එකකින් quotation call කරලා ඒ වැඩි price එකක් quality අඩු වැඩි price එකකට service එක අරන් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඊට පස්සේ book keeping කරනකොට අපි capitalize කරලා entry එක දෙපාරක් දාලා තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඔය වගේ risk තියෙන්න පුළුවන් මේ process එක ඇතුලේ. So then those are the basic risks we are going to highlight. එතකොට මේ basic business risk. එතකොට මෙහෙම මේ risk උනාට පස්සේ business එකට profitability එක business එක grow කරන්න business එක continue කරන්න අමාරු වෙනවා. ඒක challenge එක තමයි අපි කිව්වේ ඒක business risk එකක්. Is a challenge to the business. Is a challenge to achieve business objectives after having these type of misstatements. So then this business risk create some kind of a audit risk. So then here we discuss about what are the business risks relating to this process, and that is related to audit risk as well, right? Audit risk aspect we are evaluating what are the audit risk relating to the inherent risk and the risk of material misstatement control risk which impact to the financial statement. So then after having this understanding through walkthrough test you can go to audit aspect. So then as a student you should know what are the controls relating to this surrounding, and then we can start your audit procedures. So then your study guide clearly discuss about this each and every aspect. You can refer these source documents, capital budget, approval documents. So then those things you can easily go to the this study guide and refer. So then here we are giving kind of a guidance to enhance your knowledge, right? So then here we have mentioned a kind of a fixed asset register as a example. So, in the process we are having list of fixed asset. We can have this kind of a record that can be done manually or through the system. So then the company having limited number of fixed assets, you can do that in a Excel format, right? So if you are having kind of a large scale company, you can use a separate system module for fixed asset management. So then basically it should be updated purchase date, invoice date, and then reference, item code, cost, and the depreciated amount, and if there is a gain or loss, disposal gain, all those things should be updated, especially the location, right? With the location, if you are having kind of a branch network, you should identify where is it, that asset, right? Basically this is a good control, right? PP is a asset, right? Asset, we have the control, right? So asset definition calls as a company, that company should have the control in the sense the returns and whatever the benefits of that asset should be controlled by that entity. It means whatever the locations you have asset, you should have proper controls to this type of a mechanism. So then this document should be updated, and this document should be cross checked with the physical verification, and then this document should be reconciled with the general ledger. That is called PPE, reconciliation with the general ledger and the fixed asset register. So then that should be done from the management end, right? So then we can go to audit aspect. We now know the PPE process. We have already completed the walkthrough. So then we can go to audit aspect, right? Audit aspect, basically first what we have to do is, after doing your walkthrough test, you have to decide your audit approach, right? Audit approach, whether you are going to do TOC or whether you are going to do full substantive. You can do TOC plus substantive or full substantive approach. So then that's up to you to decide based on the nature of the organization. So then ඔයාගේ organisation එක ගොඩාක් PPE transaction වෙන organisation එකක් නම්, ඒ කියන්නේ manufacturing company එකක් වගේ නම්, ගොඩාක් machines use වෙනවා නම්, daily ඔයාගේ machines වල addition disposal යනවා නම්, එතකොට ඔයාට මොකක්ද කරන්නේ? ගොඩාක් transaction තියෙනවා නම්, there should be a proper process implemented and designed. That should be confirmed through the walkthrough, right? Accordingly you can perform TOC. ඔයා කරගෙන යන්නේ service related company එකක් නම්, ගොඩක් PP&E non current asset, tangible asset නැත්තම්, what you can do is, you don't want to do TOC, you can straight away go to substantive procedures. So then that's the audit approach, right? So the whatever the approach you are selecting, so then you have to focus about the basic controls and audit evidence, right? Adequate audit evidence according to the assess risk, inherent risk plus the control risk. So then if we are focusing about this TOC, what you have to do is, you have to evaluate capital payment approval, as we discussed, capex approval, whether it's budgeted or not, and then what are the security arrangement for PP&E to ensure the existence, right? And then non-current asset maintained properly, and depreciation calculation reviewed or not, and then all income is collected from income yielding assets. So then whatever the asset you are using, we have used for our income generation. So then all those things should be evaluated. Whether we can add some more things, PP verification. PP verification can be added. So then have they done that PP verification frequently, and have they approved that? So then those things can be tested. And then PP disposal. PP disposal have been done through approvals, and that calculation and the gain calculation was approved and passed to the general ledger. So then those are the controls we can test. And after completing your this control testing, you can reassess your combined risk assessment. According to the reassess combined risk assessment, you can start substantive procedures. So then again I am repeating myself. Under walkthrough test, through, as you know that we already discussed about risk assessment, after completing the walkthrough test, you did the initial combined risk assessment, right? So then through that you are deciding whether you are going to do TOC or not. If you are getting reliant control decision through walkthrough test, you are doing TOC. Under TOC you are checking what? Operating effectiveness. After checking operating effectiveness, you have to reassess this initial CRA, and then this reassess CRA should be used for substantive procedures, right? For substantive procedures, for sample selection or whatever, the identifying key items, identifying differences, you have to use reassess CRA, right? So then basically what you have to do is you can do kind of a sample verification, right? So then you can refer whatever the physical verification which was conducted by the management. You also can independently select a sample and you can verify that, right? So then you can do the reconciliation. As I said, reconciliation between general ledger and the PPE or asset register. ඒ දෙක reconcile කරලා බලන්න ඕන මොනවද differences තියෙනවද. Ideally reconciliation එකේ objective එක මොකක්ද? reconciliation එකක් කරනව නම් අපේ හැම වෙලේම තියෙන understanding එක මොකක්ද? ඒ දෙකම එකක් සමානයි කියන එක. ඒක තමයි අපි bank reconciliation එකෙත් කරේ. අපි හිතනවා cash book balance එකයි bank statement balance එකයි දෙකම එක වෙන්න ඕන කියලා assumption එකෙන් කරන්නේ. ඒක difference වෙන්න reason බලනවා. දැන් මෙතන fixed asset register එක ගන්න දේවල් update කරා නම්, හරියට depreciate කරා නම්, හරියට asset coding කරලා නම් තියෙන්නේ අපේ books වල තියෙන value එකයි GL එකේ තියෙන value එකයි register එකේ තියෙන value එකයි tally වෙන්න ඕන, සමාන වෙන්න ඕන. එහෙම නැත්නම් reason තමයි අපි හොයාගන්නේ. එහෙම නැති වෙන reason වෙන්න පුළුවන් GL එක update කරනකොට, entries pass කරනකොට වෙච්ච issues තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. asset register එක මේව කරනකොට වෙච්ච issues තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. physically asset වලට වෙච්ච item දෙකම update නොවෙච්ච differences physical verification එකෙන් හොයාගත්ත දේවල් තියෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. Right? So the reconciliation should be tested, right? So then depreciation calculation, you have to recalculate and you can check with the general ledger, and then the useful lifetime and the residual value. You can get those information from the management and you can recompute, right? And for additions and disposal, you can select a sample and you can check source documents, invoices, and then whatever the capex request note, capex good receive notes, and then cash payment, cash receipt. So then all those things can be tested. Basically the disposal gain also can be recomputed and checked with the general ledger, right? And insurance coverage, as a company we need to ensure, we are discussing about non-current asset. It means that for long run we are planning to use. As a management, it should be ensured. There's a risk because we are having this set of non-current asset. There may be some challenges or any the natural disaster or fire or something happen to this overall asset bulk, right? So then we should have proper insurance coverage that will ensure the going concern aspect and the long run, right? So then you can check the insurance coverage and the sum insured value should be cross checked with the net book value of the asset, sum insured value. So then normally you are putting an insurance by covering, the coverage should be matched with the asset value, right? And then the borrowing cost capitalization. Borrowing cost, we have separate standard, LKS 23, right? LKS 23 clearly says about if you have taken any borrowing facility to develop a qualifying asset, definitely that cost, interest costs can be capitalized, right? Borrowing cost mean that's the interest we are incurring for qualifying asset. Qualifying asset kiyanne that is an asset, it will take a substantial period of time to finish. එහෙම asset එකක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒ asset එකට ගත්ත loan and borrowings වල interest cost එක capitalize කරන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට අපි ලොකු building එකක් හදනවා නම් අපි loan එකක් අරගෙන නම් හදන්නේ. ඒ loan එක ගත්ත interest cost එක capitalize කරන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට අපි loan එකට specifically ගත්ත ඒ building එකට specifically ගත්ත loan එකක්ද generally ගත්ත loan එකක්ද කොහොමද අපි borrowing cost capitalization rate එක decide කරන්න කියන එකට අපි LKS 23 අනුව treat කරන්න ඕන. I'm not going to discuss in detail LKS 23, so that is the reference, right? එතකොට ඒ capitalize කරනවා කියන්නේ මේ PP&E asset එක වැඩි වෙනවා කියන එක. එතකොට මේ වැඩි වෙන amount එක ඔයා check කරගන්න ඕන calculation එකත් එක්ක. So then that should be tested. You can independently calculate that because for borrowing cost capitalization, borrowing cost, we have amortization schedule. We need to identify what is the exact amount we have used for this building, and that portion should be capitalized to the qualifying asset, right? And then related disclosures. 16, 40, 41 clearly says related disclosures. The valuation method and revaluation method, depreciation method. If it is a biological asset, you need to disclose the fair value method, fair value level 1, 2 or 3, observable inputs. All those disclosure requirements should be there in the financials. And then accounting standard as well as some other regulations giving some requirements, right? SEC regulations giving some requirements. All those things should be addressed through disclosures, right? Basically, if some of the asset can be pledged, අපි loan එකකට pledge කරලා තියෙනවා නම් asset set එක, ඒක අපි disclose කරලා තියෙනවා. asset වලට impairment loss එකක් එනවා නම් ඒකට කොහොමද අපි provide කරලා තියෙන්නේ, ඒක disclose කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ set එකම අපි disclosures වල mention කරන්න ඕන, right? So then if you are doing kind of a fair valuation for kind of estimate those inputs and valuation method, all those things should be disclosed under disclosures. So then after ensuring all those aspects, you can achieve that accessions, PP&E related accession set එකම අපිට check කරගන්න වෙන්නේ මේ set එකම කරලා ඉවරුනාට පස්සේ. So then physical observation එකෙන් ඔයාට existence බලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඊට පස්සේ reconciliation එකෙන් existence බලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. අපිට valuation කරනවා නම් අපි depreciation කරනවා නම් ඒකෙන් ඔයා cost එකට නම් තියෙන එකෙන් අපිට value එක බලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. valuation method එකකට නම් යන්නේ ඔයාගේ expert කෙනෙක් එළියෙන් valuer කෙනෙක් අරගෙනද කරන්න කියලා බලලා ඒ valuer ගේ independence බලලා බැලුව යූස් කරලා තියෙන ඉන්පුට්ස් චෙක් කරලා වාට වෙරිෆයි කරලා ඩොකියුමන්ට් කරන්න වෙනවා වැලුවේෂන් ඇසෙෂන් එක කම්ප්ලයි කරගන්න. එතකොට PP&E investment property biological asset whatever the non current asset මෙන්න මේ related process එක තමයි තියෙන්නේ. හැබැයි මේ related process එක company එකෙන් company එක industry එකෙන් industry එකට customize වෙන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි generally මේ procedures තමයි කරන්න වෙන්නේ. එතකොට ඔයාලට question එකක් ආවොත් question එකට relate වෙන industry එකට ඔයාලට පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕන TOC මොනවද ඔයා test of controls කරන්න ඕන මොනවද ඔයා substantive procedures කරන්න ඕන කියලා decide කරගන්න. Accordingly you can document and you can ensure the non-current asset value, right? So then with this understanding we can go to intangible assets, right? Intangible assets actually intangible asset always it's obviously that we don't have physical substance, right? Most of the cases we don't have much transaction about that intangible assets. It depends on the depends on the company nature. Intangible asset basically consists with goodwill, development cost, trademarks and then software, right? So then if you are having kind of intangible asset, the acquisition or intangible asset disposal, impairment and then amortization should be tested and ensure. Firstly what we have to do is you should understand the nature of this intangible asset. We have a separate standard LKS 38 for intangible asset. Accordingly we can have our disclosures and balances. Firstly what we have to do is you have to do kind of a walkthrough. Through this walkthrough you can understand what are the related intangible assets. So the intangible assets basically it may be this goodwill, development cost, trademark, software. So then goodwill basically according to LKS 38 internally generated goodwill can't be capitalized. If you are going to acquire a control, if you are going to acquire a kind of a company acquisition mean you are getting the control, it is a subsidiary. So as at the date you are getting the control you can calculate goodwill, right? This goodwill can be recorded in the books. Basically goodwill mean whatever the consideration you are giving, that may be cash consideration or contingent consideration or whatever the other commitments you are giving, right? So the consideration versus the net assets you are getting, net assets. Let's say you are giving kind of a consideration like 10 million, you are getting net assets like 8 million. For 8 million net assets you are giving 10 million. So you are giving excess amount. Why you are paying excess amount? That is called for goodwill, because they have not recorded internally generated goodwill. So then for their trademark, their customer base, their quality service, we have to give a value. So then that is not reflected in the books. Because of that we are paying more, that is called goodwill. The goodwill generated from the acquisition can be recorded in the books, that should be tested impairment annually. අපි development cost එක ගත්තොත් development cost එක අපි කතා කරන්නේ research cost එකත් එක්ක. research cost අපි කොයි වෙලාවකවත් capitalize කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ, because research we don't know whether it's giving future economic benefit to the organization. So then after having many research there may be kind of a feasible, technically feasible, company capable solution එකක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒක අපි development cost එකක් විදියට consider කරන්න පුළුවන්. So LKS 38 section 57 clearly saying 6 criteria to capitalize development cost, right? ඒකදී අපි බලන්න ඕන technically feasible solution එකක්ද ඒකට company එක ability එකක් තියෙනවද ඊට පස්සේ company එකේ resources financial resources තියෙනවද ඊට පස්සේ company එකේ making එන benefits අපිට measure කරන්න පුළුවන්ද ඒ වගේ criteria 6ක් තියෙනවා 6ම comply වෙනව නම් කියනවා section 57 වල you can capitalize the development cost right so then as auditor as the management what you have to do is you have to identify that process so then whatever the position you can identify that as a development cost you have to capitalize otherwise it's a expense to the organization up until the development cost that is called research cost whatever the research cost is expense development cost is a capital nature expense we can increase our asset value intangible asset value right trademarks trademark එකක් අපි purchase කරනවා නම් අපිට intangible asset එකක් විදියට capitalize කරගන්න පුළුවන් so then trademark එකක් internally generated නම් දැන් අපි company එකක් පටන් ගන්නවා ඒකට ලොකු demand එකක් තියෙනවා එතකොට අපේ logo එකෙන් තමයි logo එක තියෙන tagline එකෙන් තමයි දන්නේ අපිට දැන් brand විදියට ගත්තොත් Sampath Bank, Commercial Bank, Cargill Food City and Kiehl's and Glowmark different names small items like we have delivery services Uber Pick Me so those are brands right so then in their books they may not have that internally generated trademark value if you are purchasing something you can have as a intangible asset so then whatever the software you are using you have purchased software definitely you can capitalize as a intangible asset so then you have to understand the nature understand එක හොඳට nature එක understand කරලා මේක acquisition process එක කොහොමද board approval තියෙනවද අපිට capital budget එකෙන් මේක approve කළාද අපි PPE වගේම process එක understand කරන්න ඕන ඒ process එක ඇතුලේ nature එක understand කරලා ඊට පස්සේ approval එක payments යන approval බලලා capitalize කරලා amortize කරන එක තමයි මේ process එකේ තියෙන්නේ accordingly we can decide audit procedures we can decide audit approach with a TOC plus substantive or substantive approach හැබැයි මේකෙදී අපි recommended approach එක full substantive ඇයි එහෙම කියන්නේ TOC approach එක යන එක practical නැති වෙන්න පුළුවන් මොකද මේ වගේ transaction intangible asset related transaction ගොඩක් අඩු ඒ කියන්නේ අවුරුද්දක් ඇතුළේ very limited transaction so then we can complete that as a full substantive approach but it depends on the nature of the business if it is a kind of a virtual company so all the things happen in the virtual environment and system development website development all those things can be capitalized as intangible asset if it is so you have to do TOC but most of the cases you can go with full substantive approach because within a year you are having very limited transactions you can check the approvals and check the journal entries check the disclosures in the financial statement you can clearly complete this balance you can enhance the value of this balance once you are discussing this intangible asset you have the risk relating to the valuation of the intangible asset so then you can focus the existence as well valuation is a high risk area so then value of the intangible asset should be measured reliably because there may be amortization there may be impairment test එක අපි මේක intangible asset එක feasible economic benefit නැහැ කියලා හිතනවා නම් intangible asset එකේ recoverable value එක value in use and fair value less cost to sell දෙක බැලුවට පස්සේ book value එකට වඩා value එක අඩු නම් so we have to do a impairment right so then that's about intangible asset so as auditor you have to ensure this existence valuation and other disclosure related assertions before we are concluding your audit for that you can use mostly the full substantive approach as we discussed you can follow substantive approach customized to the nature of the intangible asset that may be checking board minutes, checking approvals, and recalculation of amortization, recalculation of impairment loss, and checking the journal entries, and all those controls can be tested based on sample basis, right. So, then we completed